Hi, and welcome to the Yorkie on pastel velour paper. As you can see, I have my drawing already on my paper. I did that with 9B graphite pencil. I just transferred that with some transfer paper. And now I'm using my 6B charcoal pencil to place in some of the dark areas in the fur. Now, with the materials that came with this workshop, you get a instructional manual and a color list, but you also will receive a reference photo so you can look at that while you're following along with me and painting. So I'm outlining the eyes with the 6B charcoal. I want to make a nice dark line, and I also take my time when I'm doing this because I want to make sure that everything is in the right place and has the right shape. Now I'm using my white charcoal pencil to mark the area where the highlight is going to be, and also the white of the eye and a few of the highlights on the outer rim of the eye and on the inside of the eye. I'm also going to use the white charcoal pencil to put in a few white hairs. This will help provide a map of sorts to show us where these light hairs are going to go when we add subsequent layers of pastel. They're going to show through. So I'm just placing a few in to kind of guide me while I paint. Now here I'm putting in the other eye on the dog. In the original reference photo, the eye doesn't show up very much, but I decided to make it a little bit bigger and a little more prominent in the portrait, which is one of the perks of being a portrait artist. You can change what your subject looks like. I mean, you can improve on it. You can make an eye bigger or something like that, which is what I chose to do with this. Now here I'm outlining the nose once again with my 6B charcoal pencil. I put in the nostrils and I'm outlining that edge. Now I have my white charcoal pencil and I'm going to mark the highlights on the bottom rim of the nostrils. So this marking that we're doing will show through when we add color to the top of the nose. Here I'm putting in a few dark hairs on the dog, particularly where the lips are, so I can find those easier when I add some of the base coat layers. Now here I'm using the charcoal pencil on its side and just putting in a little shading of where the dark hair is going to be on this dog, which is around the neck and down the chest. So I don't want it to be super dark at this point, so I'm just kind of shading it lightly by holding my pencil on the side. And here I'm putting in a few more of those light wispy hairs with my white charcoal pencil. Now it's time to add some of the base coats, and the first color I'm going to put down is a Rembrandt 707.7. Now I have broken the stick in half and sanded one edge flat so that I have a flat edge that I can cross-hatch color back and forth. Be sure and watch the introduction to pastel videos that come with this project, or you can find them free on my website as well, that show you the different techniques that I use when working on velour paper, how to prepare the paper, and also how to prepare and sharpen the pastels for use. So I'm just giving this a good even coat all over the dog, avoiding the eyes. Now I'm using the Rembrandt 411.5 burnt sienna, which is kind of a red-brown, light red-brown color. And I'm putting in the areas that I see in the reference photo where the dog has a light red-brown color. And you can see I'm holding the stick, it's a half a stick, but I'm holding it up on its end so that I'm using the round end to add the color. This enables me to get into smaller spaces. So I use the flat edge when I'm covering a large space, but I'll use this smaller round edge to get into smaller spaces. Just take your time and add the color slowly where you see it. Here I'm putting some in the ears. We can always add more color, but we can't always easily take off too much pastel. So just add it a little at a time until you get it just where you want it. And use a light touch. We don't want too much pastel in on top of this paper. Now I'm using it on its edge to add more to the chest area. Now I'm going to go a little darker with a darker shade. This is Rembrandt 411.3. This is also in the burnt sienna range or the red-brown range, but it has a little more black added to the pigment so that it makes it darker. And so I'm going to darken around the eyes and other areas on the dog's face. And here again, I'm using this pastel up on its end. So I would break the pastel in half, and then I would take the paper off and sand the ends if I'm going to use it on the end. And it's always good to do that anyway, I think, or hold it flat on my sandpaper and sand the edge before I use it. And always wipe the dust off with an old rag that you have so you don't get too much pastel on your paper in places that you don't want it. Now that we have some of our base coats in, we're going to go to our new pastels and continue to build color. So I'm using a dark gray 259 new pastel that I've sharpened to a point to add some color. Now I've decided that's not quite dark enough, so I'm picking up my Rembrandt, the 704.3 dark gray, and I'm adding some color on the face. In the smaller areas, I'm going to use my new pastel because it's easier for me to get into the little tiny areas with that. Here again, I'm using the 704.3 dark gray Rembrandt, cross-hatching in some dark gray color on this black fur area of the neck, taking it darker and darker. And as you can see, the white hairs that I put in earlier are showing through the color. I'm adding a little more red, and sometimes I'll pick up the gray and add a little more gray color, just whatever looks best to me. Now we're going to put in the eyes. First I'm going to outline them with New Pastel 305 Spruce Blue. Now I've sharpened this to a point with a brass 2-hole sharpener so that I can control it better. I love New Pastels for doing this detail work. So everything that's the reason I'm using the blue is that everything that's going to be black, I want it to be more colorful, and I add the blue underneath. So I'm going to rim the eye with the blue and then add black on top of it. And by doing that, I'll create a richer black color than if I just used black by itself. Now I'm also outlining the eye on the right with my 305 Spruce Blue New Pastel. And now I'm going over that blue with 229 Black New Pastel. It makes a rich, lovely black. Now we're going to color in the irises of the dog's eyes, and we're going to start with 263 Indian Red New Pastel. So I'm just coloring that in evenly. You can see the white highlight I put in earlier with the white charcoal pencil still shows up. We're just going to color these in evenly and a light coat, and I'm going to do that with the other eye as well. Now I'm going to darken the iris up where the shadow would fall, and I'm using 353 Cordovan to add dark color at the top of the eye. And I'm going to go over that with a little, very lightly, using my 229 Black to make it a little darker. And that's the shadow cast by the lid. Here's the 353 again, adding a little more color up there. You can see our eye is taking on quite a bit of dimension. I'm also going to use the 353 Cordovan to add some darker colors in the iris as I see them in the reference photo. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other eye. Now I'm using my 229 black to darken around the bottom edge of the iris. Just lightly applying color. And darkening the pupil. Now we're going to add some more color to the eye, and to do that I'm going to use 343 New Pastel Rust. And this is a brighter red than some of the other reds we've used. And so I'm going to add some of that red color right there on the side of the iris, a little at the base, particularly there on the side and on the other side of the pupil. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other eye. This color coincides pretty closely with our Rembrandt 411.5 burnt sienna. Now I'm going to make it a little brighter. This is 266 pale vermilion, and I'm going to place a little of this red orange just in a couple of spots in the eye. It's really going to make it pop. And over, I'm going to even up a little with a little 263 there. Make sure to get that edge right. Put in a little more 353. I didn't quite like the way that shape was. So now's the time to fix it. So back to adding the 266 pale vermilion. And a little bit in the right eye as well. And over the pale vermilion, we're going to add some 207 chrome yellow. And when we do that, the two together visually form a very vivid orange. And just adds a special pop of color to the eye. This is a very useful technique when painting brown eyes. It looks like he's going to speak to us, doesn't he? Now, final touch is to add a bright white hot spot with a white 211 New Pastel. I'm going to add a little dot in the corner of the eye. Now I'm using my 450 Carbothello blue pencil to add a reflected blue highlight from the sky across the pupil. And that adds an extra touch of realism to our painting. Now I'm going to use my white charcoal pencil to even out the white of the eye on the left side of the eyeball, and to add some little dots, moisture dots in the corner. And I'm going to use my blue pencil to add a few highlights on the outer edge of the bottom lid of the eye. Add a little more blue inside the eye. And I'm going to use the white charcoal pencil to place my highlight I'm going to move it. I didn't like where it was, so I'm going to make a new one. Cover the old one up with black. I like that better. Add a little of that 266 red to the outer edge and a little 207 chrome yellow over top of that. And now we're going to color that nose. So we're going to base coat the nose with a 305 spruce blue because we want it's eventually going to be black, so we want to add some blue underneath it. I'm going to darken the nostrils. I'm pushing a little harder with my new pastel. And then I'm just going to color it in. Just like I was using crayons in a coloring book. Now I'm using my blue pencil to put a highlight on the edge of the nostrils. And that's going to show through when we add the black. Now we're going to cover the blue with our 229 black new pastel. We're going to punch up the highlights on the edge of the nose with the white 211 and the Carbothello 450 pastel pencil to add a few dots to the nose. I'm darkening the area under the nose down towards the mouth with my 6B charcoal pencil. He's really starting to come alive since we've added his eyes. Decided to use a darker color, so I'm going to use my black 229 new pastel to add dark color around the mouth and underneath the nose. Now I'm going to add some darker colors to the fur. We're building up darks so that we can add our light fur on top. And I am using a dark brown sepia, number 293, new pastel. That's really a pretty neutral brown, so I'm going to use some of that. And for some of the darker red-brown areas, this is 353 cordovan. I'm going to use to add some darker brown. So I'm just going to color it in where I see it. You can always add more color. This is 263. So I'm going to add these colors to darken up the fur on our dog's face. Then we can add the light hairs on top. Now this is the 259 dark gray. I'm using my 229 black to get the mouth just right. I don't want to lose that mouth. And when we start adding the light hair, it would be very easy to lose the shape of the mouth and the position of the mouth. So I want to make sure I get that in. Adding some brown underneath the mouth on the bottom lip. So I'm just going to continue to work back and forth between the browns and the dark gray to build up color on the dog's face. I want to get darker color in around his eyes. So I'm adding more brown there. And I'm using the 263 and the 353 and the dark gray. The dog's coloring, this particular breed of dog, the hairs, there's quite a few colors in here. So we get those under colors, and we can add the light hairs over top for a nice blend of color. I'm continuing to add brown on the right side of the dog. And this is the 263 Indian Red. I still think it needs to be darker under the eyes, so I'm adding a light layer of black over the browns. And that adds a lot of depth. The biggest thing I see in my classes is that oftentimes my students don't go dark enough. Without the dark, you're not going to be able to see the light. So we want to get those darks in. Now that I've added all that gray on the side of the face, I'm using my 9B graphite pencil on its edge to smooth things out and to also help push that color down into the nap of the paper. The 9B pencil is very useful when I work. I use it a lot of ways. And as we go along, I'll tell you more about that. Now I'm using my charcoal pencil, my 6B, to make it just a little bit darker on the side of the face. I'm going to speed this up a little bit while I continue to add dark colors and get this doggy ready for his final coat. Now I've changed the camera angle slightly so that you can see what I'm doing along the top of the head of the dog, drawing in the ear and adding those hairs. We're back in regular speed now, and I've decided that I need the neck to be darker, the fur. So I'm adding 305 spruce blue over the area that's eventually going to be that gray-black color. I'm using my white charcoal pencil to just add a few white hairs to the back edge of the dog's neck and to the back of his head, and a few under his chin. I'm going to darken this area under the neck. I took my 305 blue spruce new pastel and I broke off a little piece and sanded the edge, and I'm using that to cover this area more evenly. It's easier to do it this way than to use the point of the new pastel when you have a large area to cover. I generally keep these little broken pieces in my pastel box I usually have a piece of black and dark gray and also the blue, and then I can just grab them when I need them and use them. So I'm just going to get that blue down, and then we're going to add some more color on top of that. Now I'm using a half a stick of Rembrandt 700.5 black. This is a wonderful, deep, rich black. So I'm adding that over top of the 305 spruce blue. To darken up that fur. I'm using a very light touch, and I'm cross-hatching back and forth to cover the area evenly. And now I'm adding the dark brown Rembrandt, the 411.3 darker burnt sienna color down at the bottom edge of the dog's neck, and just almost off camera. And now I'm using my 229 black new pastel to add some even blacker hairs to the dog's fur in the neck area. Be sure and join me for part 2 of this project. We're going to start adding the light hairs on top of the dog's fur over all of these beautiful dark browns that we've added. And for more projects, please go to my website at kwit.com.